The council races were no strangers to its newest members having some kind of racial oddity. Whether it was the Yumfall and their inability to breathe anything but nitrogen, the Ilgra and their general pacifism, or the Exeduk and their obligate herbivorism, every new member race to council space in the recent centuries had some kind of bizarre proclivity about them that the other member races were going to have to learn to accept. It had come as no surprise, then, when the humans had made themselves known to council space. They had been welcomed with open arms, of course, as all new species to council space were, after all, past events had taught the council races that gunship diplomacy tended to be a bad idea more often than not. This was a polite way of saying that they were still trying to rebuild most of Sector XIV after some enterprising young Thrakoi captain had spotted what was unmistakably a fleet of warships there to greet them upon their first exit from FTL, and thinking that his entire ship was mere moments away from being atomized, had immediately fired off a barrage of thermonuclear warheads, a move now commonly referred to as the Hammer of God Special, in an attempt to take something down with him. Fortunately for the hailing group of warships, their kinetic barriers had protected them from the barrage. Unfortunately, the barrage still had to go somewhere, and that somewhere ended up being Sector XIV. Fortunately, Sector XIV was relatively unpopulated at the time, and so there were very few casualties. But needless to say, gunboat diplomacy had ended up being one of said casualties. Ever since then, the Council had seen fit to greet all newcomers with open arms and only respond with force if the need were to arise. They'd grown accustomed to the various oddities of the incoming races as a result, which was why the humans were so unusual by comparison. Because, try as they might, the Council races couldn't find anything particularly strange about the humans. Sure, they were featherless bipeds, but appearances aside, temperament-wise, they were the same as roughly all the other races, save for a few outliers. About the weirdest thing they had going for them was the human-made media they consumed, which apparently frequently featured people who were mostly human, save for a set of animal ears on their head, or something along those lines. This was certainly odd, but as far as a racial oddity went, it didn't even crack the top 10 for weirdness factor among the various council races. All this was to say that despite their best efforts, nobody could find anything about the humans that really marked them as odd. Councilman Shin, you seem nonplussed about something. Until now, that is. Councilman Shin raised one of his 8 tentacles and brushed it across his forehead a few times. He'd seen humans do this a number of times when they were confused about something, so hopefully it made him look like he was fitting in, as opposed to simply being very, very confused. "Excuse me," Captain Rhodes Zing began. The translators they were all using thankfully picked up his speech even down to the correct cadence he'd intended to use. This was good, because it meant he could indicate his confusion without outright asking what was on his mind, which was, for lack of a better term, much more informal language-wise than a diplomat should ever be associated with. "What in the actual fuck am I looking at? Could you perhaps explain what's going on to me, please?" That was much better. Now he merely sounded inquisitive rather than creeped out. Another win for public relations. Hopefully it would hold up long-term throughout the conversation. "Oh, that's Demeter," Captain Rhodes replied nonchalantly. "She's one of our ship girls." And there it goes. "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Shin requested. "It almost sounded like you said." "Ship girl. I know. Well, I'll be honest, I don't know how to explain it beyond that. She's a girl who's a ship." Sin paused. "So when you say she's a ship?" "She's literally a ship," Rhodes emphasized. He pointed out the spaceport's window. "See that warship out there? That's her actual form." Sin's 6 eyes blinked in tandem. Slowly, he turned to look out the window. "Sweet Grack, that's a lot of guns on that ship." Just as slowly, he turned back to Captain Rhodes. "I see," he repeated, in a tone that he hoped indicated was diplomatic, but that he also hoped made readily apparent that he actually didn't see at all. He cleared his throat. Pardon me, Captain Rhodes, but I was under the impression that this was to be a diplomatic meeting. Why bring a warship with you? Because Demeter isn't just a warship, he emphasized. She's one of us too. We just haven't brought any of our ship girls to these diplomatic talks yet because, like you said, these are diplomatic meetings and that'd just be uncouth of us. I mean, we only just made contact with the council a few weeks ago. And what kind of crazy person brings something like a warship to their first few diplomatic meetings? That's just weird. Sin's six-eyed gaze slid back to Demeter. Weird indeed. See? You understand. It'd be kind of like wearing a concealed handgun on your first date with a girl. Good way to get pepper sprayed and kneed in the groin, if you ask me. Admittedly, I do not know what that means. Oh, well. Pepper spray is basically the essence of hellfire applied directly to the eyes. It makes for a surprisingly effective self-defense tool. As for getting kneed in the groin, I'll come right out and say it, that's a direct hit to the reproductive organs. Sin blinked again. Ah, he thought to himself. Did not expect the human reproductive organs to be there, to be honest. Not sure where I expected to find them, but definitely not there. Back of the knee, maybe. Captain, the girl between them suddenly asked. Permission to speak freely. Granted, Demeter. Demeter nodded, then turned to Shin and offered him a nod. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Captain Rhodes has spoken highly of you to us. Us? There are more of you, Shin asked. Demeter nodded. Yes, an entire fleet even. Around 100, last I counted, though more are in production. Sin stared at her for a moment, then turned back to Captain Rhodes. If you don't mind me asking, what purpose do these ship girls of yours serve? Oh, well, they're basically incredibly advanced artificial intelligences that control the mechanical aspects of our warships, Rhodes offered. And this doesn't make the crew redundant. Oh, of course it does. Ship girls don't have a crew. Generally speaking, they're entirely self-sufficient. They are capable of ferrying soldiers from place to place, of course, but that isn't their intended purpose. And what is their intended purpose? The same as any warship. Sin blinked again. I see. And if you don't mind me asking once more. Shoot. Oh, sorry, human figure of speech. It basically means ask away. Sin stared at Captain Rhodes once more. Why humans had decided that the act of pulling a trigger was supposed to mean the same thing as telling someone to ask a question, he had no idea. But then again, not every species could be as eloquent as the Varian, he supposed. Then again, the Varian exclusively talked in riddles and purple prose, so perhaps that was for the best. Right, Sin volunteered. He cleared his throat. So, are there any shipboys by any chance? No, Rhodes asked, suddenly sounding very suspicious. Why not? Because that'd be weird. Ships are always female. Of course, their avatars would be always female, too. Sin just stared at him for a moment before turning back to Demeter. So, Demeter. Demeter, Rhodes corrected him. That's what I said, Captain. No, you said Demeter. Her name is Demeter. You need to really enunciate it, otherwise you can't hear the italics. Her name is always italicized. Of course, she's a ship. Sin said nothing in response, instead turning back to Demeter. As I was saying, so, Demeter, the humans treat your kind respectfully. She nodded. Affirmative. Ultimately, we are military equipment to be used as they see fit, but they treat us very well, all things considered. We may not officially wear rank insignias, but we are still considered part of their military. Oh, well, that's good to hear, Sin said. Affirmative. That is why we are all more than happy to wear the extremely short-skirted combat outfits they request of us. Sorry, what? Demeter Rhodes chastised. Why hide it? Captain Demeter questioned. We were designed to have it, so we might as well flaunt it. And besides, the troops don't seem to mind. That's no way to discuss your state-of-the-art battle dress uniform. Respectfully, Captain, it's state-of-the-art, the same way being issued woodland camo in a desert is state-of-the-art. And besides, it's for the best that it's so skimpy. Anyway, it makes for easy access, after all. Sheen said slowly. I'm just, going to go make a call to my superior real quick. I'll be right back. With that, he slithered out of the room as fast as he could, suddenly uncaring of how it reflected on diplomatic relations. Rhodes and Demeter watched the automatic doors close behind Jean for a moment before they turned towards each other. Once he was gone, Rhodes breathed a sigh of relief, then brought a hand up to wipe at his brow. Phew, he said. I think that went well, all things considered. Thanks for your help, Demeter. Of course, Captain, she said, though I have to ask. Was this really the smartest move to make? Now they're going to think you're all incredibly strange. We're humans, Rhodes pointed out. We are incredibly strange. I suppose so. And besides, Rhodes said, putting a hand on her shoulder, if anything, this'll lead to them underestimating us or otherwise being afraid of us, which will be advantageous to further diplomatic talks. He flashed her a grin. Excellent improvisation regarding the skimpy combat outfits, by the way. He bought that line about easy access, hook, line, and sinker. Good work. Demeter perked up at that. Truly. Yup, he said. Now our genetically engineered cat girls won't seem nearly as weird by comparison.